Hello there everyone, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns and today I'm going to show you how to make these teardrop shaped wire kumihimo earrings, and this is the pair that I've made here. So what we have is, per earring we make one length of braid throughout the whole piece there, and then we add in the curve by adding beads in along the way. I finish off the ends there using these ribbon ends so we can then attach our findings to. And then the materials that I've chosen to use here is first of all my silver wire, and I combine that with these colourful beads, so they're rainbow hematite gemstone rounds, and they're also faceted so they add a nice sparkle when they dangle from the ear, and also that nice pop of colour against that silver wire. So because of how we add the beads in while we make the braid, that's what creates this curve here on the bottom and ultimately then creates this teardrop shape. And then obviously you can combine your materials however you want to and achieve very different looks depending what colours and materials that you choose to use for yours. So if you like wire kumihimo designs, I recommend checking out my book because there's loads of different and interesting designs in that with wire kumihimo. So I'm going to put links in the description box below. So similar things to this, so if you like these, that might be of interest for you. But otherwise, if you want to learn how to make these earrings now, then keep watching. So it's these materials here that we're going to need. First of all, I have my square kumihimo because it is a flat braid structure that we're making. And then the wire that I'm using is this 0.8mm regular round silver coated copper wire to make the braid with. And then the beads that we're going to need are these 3mm rounds here. Now specific ones that I'm using are these rainbow coated hematite gemstone beads, and they're faceted as well, so they also add a lovely sparkle. So regardless what beads that you use, you just got to make sure the holes are large enough for your wire to go through, and also that the bead strength of themselves are strong enough because we are using them with thicker gauge wire, so you want to make sure the beads don't break as we're adding them into the braid. And that's what I find, that hematite gemstone beads tend to work really well for it. And then to finish off the ends of the braid here, I'm using these ribbon ends to give it a nice professional finish, and then we can attach our findings to them in those little loops. So I have my earring posts and butterfly backs, and of course some jump rings to put it together. Now I'm going to have the material list and links as well in the description box down below so you can check that out, but otherwise let's get all the materials ready and let's get started. So then the lengths of wire that we'll need is 8 lengths here of about 35cm each, and just make sure that they're nice and straightened out there so there's no kinks in them. Then what I've done is I made sure all the ends are even, so put them together there. I put a piece of insulation tape around them so they lay like this, and then the very end of the wires are just bent back on themselves to stop them from pulling down through the tape. So then we need to get a kumihimo disc out here because we need to attach our wires to it so we can obviously start braiding, and I have my wires ready here. So what I want to do is the end with the tape on there, I'm going to put down through the hole in the center, and then I'm just going to grab onto it below the disc with my hand underneath it here, and then hold it in place in the center of the disc there in the hole. And then make sure that the tape is kind of right below where the top of the disc is, so it's flush with it and against the back wall, you could say. Then we need to distribute these lengths of wires. So I'm just going to take from one side, I'm just starting from the left and going towards the right. I'm taking the first one and placing that into, in my case here it's slot 5 on the top, but if you just imagine, we need to fill the 4 middle slots on the top and the 4 middle slots on the bottom. So just the furthest left one of those 4. And then the next one I bring to the bottom and put in the opposite slot like that. The next one after that, I then put in the next one in. So this is the left of the 2 middle slots there. The next one comes down into the directly opposite one. And then now what I'm going to do is kind of do the mirrored on this other side of the disc. So the next one, just separate it out here from the others. I'm going to also bring down. Next one after that, I then bring up, and the rest we just keep doing the same thing, so alternating. Comes down at the bottom, so now we have 4 on the bottom there, and the last one goes up, so we have 4 now on the top. And then just get our wires kind of in position here, and this is now all the wires attached to the disc. So now what we need to do is start braiding with our wires. So what we need to do is make a length of braid before we start adding in any beads, because it's going to be kind of one side of the earring, and the braid structure that we're going to be doing is the cross kumihimo braid structure. So I'm going to start from the top here and start with the 2 middle wires on the top. First of all, out of those 2 middle ones, I'm going to take the right one, release it, and then I smooth it out with my fingers, run it through my hands and fingers here. Then I bring it out to the left side, so the right one of the 2 middle ones goes to the left, and I like to then press down here with my finger as I'm pulling it to the side and still running it through my hand. and then place it into the slot on the side of the disc there, just right out to the side. Then the left one of those two middle ones on the top, again smooth out the wire, and then bring that out to the right, and again press down there in the middle, because that then helps get the braid nice and tight. And then out into the slot on the right side. So that's those two, bringing them out to the side. Now we need to move all the bottom and the top ones to the opposite side of where they currently are. So what I'm going to do is kind of imagine that we have a line down through the center of the disc. So we have two sides. We have the right side of the disc and the left side. I'm just going to work on one side at a time. So I just start on my left side, it doesn't matter which one. So out of the two middle ones on the bottom there, I take the left one, because that's the first one on this side, because that's opposite the empty one that we just freed up. And that needs to be brought to the top there, over the middle, and into that slot. And what I'm going to do is, first of all, just smooth it out. Then I bring it, hold it in my hand, and then I put my thumb against the wire there, while I then kind of push against it and bring it over, kind of in a rolling motion like that. And then up and into the slot. Then I take the next one out, smooth out the wire. Do the same thing, but use my index finger in a rolling motion, bring it down with a bit of force, and then into that empty slot on the bottom that was freed up from the previous movement. The next one out, smooth it out, using your thumb in that rolling motion, and up to the top. So that's now all the ones on the left side moved. Then I need to do the same thing, but on the right side. So I just swap hands here, and I'm always just holding underneath the disc there, in this case for now on that taped part. But as the braid's going to keep growing, we're going to keep holding right underneath the disc here, so we're going to kind of move our fingers up the braid to hold on to it. But then I take this right one out of those two middle ones on the bottom and use my thumb to press against, bring it up to the empty slot on the top. The next one out, use my index finger and bring it into the empty slot on the bottom. And then the last one here, again my thumb, and then place that in the empty slot on the top. So we now do have 4 wires in the top there, slots. But then to get 4 wires on the bottom, what we need to do is bring the side ones back into the braid. So I just take one side at a time, release it, smooth it out, and then I always use my index finger to press against the side of the braid to help tighten everything up, as I then bring it down into that, the right one into the right slot down here. On the other side, same thing. Smooth it out, and then as I kind of pull at it, tug at it a bit, I then press against the side of the braid and then bring it down. And now again we have 4 wires in the 4 middle slots on the bottom, so they're now opposite each other again, and they're back in the original setup. And this was then one full round of our braid structure. So what we need to do now is keep repeating this basically. So again, out of those 2 middle ones on the top, I take the right one first of all. I always start with that one to keep it consistent, and then I bring it out to the left side, make sure to push against there in the middle. Swap hands, and then I take the left one of those 2 middle ones up to the right, push against in the middle there, because that really helps tighten up the braid. All the movements that we do with our fingers and pushing against the braid in the middle, that really helps tighten it up and make it nice and even. Now to move all the bottom top ones, start on the bottom. Again, I start on my left side, you can also start on the right, it doesn't matter. Take the left one of the 2 middle ones, bring it to the empty slot on the top. The next one out, smooth it out as we then bring it down into the empty slot on the bottom. As you can see, I'm constantly, every round that I do, I'm using my fingers here to help kind of mold the wire by that rolling motion, whether it's my thumb or my index finger. Release the next one, and then smooth it out and bring it to the opposite side, just like this here. And the last one, and so we then have the side ones to bring back in. And as you can see, I'm constantly again still just holding on to the braid underneath the disc. I feel like that gives more control. And then the side ones, smooth them out before then bringing them down and back into the braid. Same on the other side, so we then end up with all the wires in the original setup, and then that's another round. So like I said, just keep doing this until you have the length that we need. So now I kept braiding here, and then the length of my braid is coming out in the back of the disc, so it looks like this. And the length of this is about 4 centimeters long, so that's the length we need before we now need to start adding in the beads as well. So first of all, we just need to start a new round here, because we need to start the round off and then we add in the bead during the round. So starting the same way, take the right one out of those 2 middle ones on the top, bring that out to the left side, again making sure that it's nice and tight in the middle there, the braid. Then I take the left one of the 2, and bring that out to the right. So they're now going out to the side of the disc, and now I need to start moving the remaining ones just like before. So you can see so far this round is the exact same, and it is going to be the same otherwise. It's just on one wire we're going to then add in a bead. So that's the one side. Here I've not added in any beads. Then I'm going to swap hands again and to go to the other side and do the same thing. So take the middle one there, bring that across to the other side, the top one comes down, and then now the last one that we need to move, I'm going to release that, but then before moving it I'm going to smooth it out completely because we need to be able to get the bead onto this. So I'm just grabbing a bead and then going right to the end of this wire here, adding the bead onto the wire just like that, and then you just let it drop all the way down. So that's why you need to make sure you smooth this out so there's no kinks that kind of stops the bead from going all the way down there. So it needs to go all the way into the hole until basically it can't go any further. And then what we need to do is we bring this wire over to the top, so the opposite side of the disc. We need to make sure that this bead stays underneath the wire that's going out to the side. So if you need to just kind of reposition it, lift it up a little bit. If you need to make space for the bead, so make sure you kind of push that down. Then as you bring in this wire over, it slots into place in kind of that little corner, but still make sure you make it nice and tight. And then that bead is going to be sitting on this right side of the braid. But now finish off the round in the same way. Again, make sure you tighten this up nicely, especially because of that bead. Obviously that bead is going to add a little bit of kind of extra spacing in it, but we still need to try and make it as tight as possible because to make it consistent, but also because those beads, adding them on the one side is what's going to create the curve that we're going to need to then get the final teardrop shape. So that's now the full round here where we're adding in a bead. So now what we need to do is start another round the exact same way, and on this one I just move all my wires here one at a time in the exact same way as previously. The opposite side there, and then the other half of the disc, same again. And now as I move into the last one, this one here, we don't add a bead in. So in this round, the previous round we just added a bead, and in this one here I'm not going to add a bead in, just like normal, just like before. Make sure to tighten it up, and then the other side, and then again we have all the wires back in the original setup. So this is now another round, and now with no bead added in this one. So I just thought I would show you another round here up close so you can see specifically how to add the bead in, and also just see the movements up close here, because this next round I'm going to do now, I'm going to add in a bead again. So again, out of those two middle ones on the top, the right one goes to the left side. Make sure you push down right there in the middle. The left one here, smooth it out, and then like I said, I push it down in the middle there as tight as I can, and then out to the right. Then the bottom one, I use my thumb there to press against and do that rolling motion. Bring it to the top so it goes tight around this wire that's coming out to the side. It's kind of the purpose of that. And then my index finger, same principle, but to come down. And the final one on this side here. Then moving to the other side, and again still I'm just holding on to my braid underneath the disc there, right under the hole. You can kind of see my fingers. Then take the middle one to the top, the next one out, down to the bottom, and then this one here, the last one, I've released that and completely smoothed it out so we don't have kinks in it, because then we add a bead onto this one and let it drop all the way down there in the middle. And then just that's where you want to make sure it then is going to slot in and go underneath the wire that's going out to the side there. As you're bringing this current wire over it, make sure that that bead stays in that little corner underneath, and then put it into the slot on the top, and then you can see the bead just sits right there, which ends up then on the side of the braid. And then we just bring the side ones down, tighten that nicely, which is also really going to help emphasize the curve we're going to get on the other side as well. So this is now another round. So what we want to do is the next round again, we then need to not add a bead in. So basically now that we started adding the beads in, we're going to add them in every other round So in between them, do a round without a bead. So that's really going to give the pattern that we want. So far I've added in 5 beads now, and I just wanted to show you what it's going to look like. So if you make sure you get this as tight as possible, your braid is going to end up curving naturally on the back of the disc like this here because of the beads that we add on one side. And then you're going to find that this length is going to kind of start to go up against the back of the disc. So obviously it's going to get a little bit in the way because we need to add in more beads. So what you also then need to do is basically just create space to be able to keep braiding, because we need this curve to come all the way around so we can then make a straight length of the other side as well. So what you have to do is start basically bending this. Obviously try and keep the shape of the actual braid itself, but just gently bending it forward a bit where the curve is here. So something like that. You can see instead of going straight out to the side, I'm now curving it in a different direction, and then that opens it up a little bit more. Then you want to add in another bead or two, and then whenever it starts to hit again, you want to just kind of open it up a little bit more. Same principle really as opening and closing a jump ring. It just creates that little bit more space until you've then added in all the beads. So now I added in all my beads, and what I have in total is 10 beads with a round with no bead in between them there, just like I explained. On the back of my disc it then looks a bit like this. So I've also kept pushing this end of the braid out of the way, just like I explained, the more and more, so I could keep making more of a curve into it there when adding in the beads. So originally this tail came out basically straight out towards the left. Now it's almost coming all the way out to the right there. So just keep pushing it like that, like a jump ring. So it's important that you do that, because that way we keep the structure of the braid and the curve in place. So once we take this off the disc, we can just flatten it back out and we have the shape still, instead of actually trying to straighten this out, because then we're going to lose the shape. So what you also just want to do is, as I'm braiding this, obviously it can be a little bit more difficult to hold on to here, but just keep holding your fingers right underneath basically the hole there in the disc. So right under there where you're actually making the braid, so you have most control, still keep holding on to that. Then what we need to do now is back on the top here, we basically just need to keep braiding now, but without adding beads in, because we need to now get another straight length of braid, just like we have in the beginning. So you just want to pick back up your rounds, braid until you have about the same length. Now I then braided that length as well here. So then it looks a little something like this on the back of the disc. So you can see I just left it kind of open like that, because obviously it still would be in the way of the disc. So now that we have actually the whole braid finished, what we can do is literally just take this off the disc. And because this is wire, all you have to do is just release the wires here, and you don't have to worry about the braid coming undone or unraveling. So just like that, and you can just kind of maneuver this through and release it from your disc, just like that here, and then we're left with this. So firstly, what I then like to do is just kind of straighten out these wires here and get them out of the way. So I just literally straighten them out so we kind of get rid of that bend all the way there, and then the same with the other ones. And this is just to kind of make it easier to continue working with, so they don't get so much in the way. And then I also just like to kind of bring them together, so they just literally come straight out from the end of the braid like that. And then from there, obviously we still have this kind of open shape as if it was a jump ring. So all you want to do with that is basically close it back up. So you just want to start bringing the two ends more together, like you would when you're closing a jump ring there. So you end up with, as you can see, we then keep that curve. We end up with these two straight lengths of the braid actually crossing over each other. And then it's just a matter of kind of adjusting this until you're happy. You can adjust the curve a little bit if you need to bring one a bit closer in, kind of maybe opened up a bit. But then otherwise just keep straightening it out until you have your teardrop shape. You see that one needs to come over a bit, or that one needs to be opened up a bit, just to get it nice and symmetrical. When you have your teardrop shape here, and then when you're happy with it, then we just got to finish off the ends here, and obviously attach our findings as well so we can actually wear it. So now I have my shape ready, then what I recommend that you do before you finish off the ends is that you actually make your second one as well. So that once you're at this point with the second one, you can kind of compare them to each other and just make sure that you then get the shapes as even as possible. So obviously we get a symmetrical pair. But then once you've done that, you have both ready, then it's time to finish off the ends of the braids, but also obviously add the findings there. So I'm going to be using these ribbon ends to do that, and it's going to be placed where basically these two ends of the braid are crossing over each other, so sit somewhat like that. So I like to kind of use that to measure, because that's going to give me an idea where I need to cut the ends of the braid off. So something like that, so I know that, I then take my flush cutters here, heavy duty ones, and go in and cut off the excess. Now I'd rather cut off too little than too much, because you can always cut off a bit more, but obviously you can't add any more if you cut off too much. Something like that, and just let me get that ribbon end again, just to kind of compare with. Probably move down a little bit more. And you just want to cut so we get straight across, because we want to cut straight across both of the ends, but obviously kind of thick wire here, so I'm just going to do one at a time. So something a bit like that there. So I'm going to take this one first of all, cut off the excess, literally cut straight through the wire. If you just need to do a little at a time, you can do that. Like that, and then you can always use that to kind of measure for the other one, so you can see already where you need to cut. So again, place your cutters and then start cutting that one straight across. Just like that. And you can see we now have a straight line there, which is going to fit nicely inside the ribbon end. But what I also like to do, because we have the two braids and they're still overlapping a little bit like that, and it's going to be a little bit bulky inside of that ribbon end then. So what I like to do, because it can then be hard to clamp it down, is I actually like to cut off the inner corners as well. So obviously not too far down, because we don't want the ends of the wire sticking out below the ribbon end, but just kind of try and cut off a little bit from the inside corner there. Just get through them. Same with the other one. So like that, so you can see they more or less now don't overlap. And then, because of that, they'll fit much better inside of that ribbon end. Obviously you just need to kind of straighten this out properly. So there you go. Now, like I said before, make the other one, and what I do prefer to do is also cut both of them next to each other here before I actually then add the ribbon ends. It's just easier to then see, compare them to know exactly, as much as possible, that we add the ribbon end also in the same place as well. So do this the same with the other one, and just keep comparing it to the one that you've already done here. So now I have it ready here. Then what I'm going to do is, when I add my ribbon end, I'm also going to add some glue. So I'm going to be using my E6000, because it's going to add far more security and also actually make the ribbon end adhere nicely to the piece, because obviously it's kind of metal on metal that we're putting. So the glue is just really going to make them adhere nicely together. So I just put a little bit on a toothpick here first of all. Doesn't have to be too much. And then I grab the ribbon end and then put the glue inside of it, up and down the inside walls there to cover them. And like I said, it doesn't have to be too much, because it's just going to come spilling out anyways. We'll clamp it down, but just enough. And then whatever I have left on my toothpick, I always like to put on the end of the braid here. And really get it in between the nooks and crannies of all the wires there within the braid. So just like that. And we then grab the two pieces here and put them together. So I put the ribbon end on top of the ends of the wires. So just like that here, make sure it sits nice and straight. Then I take some flat nose pliers, and then we just need to clamp this down, because right now obviously it's still open. So clamp it down, and I like to kind of hold the piece in my hand, and then I have a finger on either side of the ribbon ends, and then I gradually clamp them down. So I don't go into one place and make a big push, because as you can see, the ribbon end can slip around quite easily. Because like I said, it's metal on metal, but also we have the glue in there that's still not dry obviously. But then when I'm almost there, I just want to double check that it's sitting straight, and if it's not, you can always just adjust it, final bit, before you then go in and do your final squeeze. So pretty hard to make it grab onto the ends of the braid nicely. Because the ribbon end does have these little teeth. Obviously usually that'll dig into the fabric or cord that you're using. This is wire, so it's not quite going to do that, but that's also why we're then using the glue. And I also like to always close up the ends as much as I can. So just like that. And then what you just got to do is obviously finish off the other one in the exact same way, and then let it dry, because as you can see it can still move around. So it's when the glue dries, it's going to get really nice and secure and strong. Then once it's done that, you can then use those little loops here and attach your earring findings using jump rings, and then you're going to have your finished pair of earrings. So now I've finished off both of the earrings here, and I've also attached my earring findings so they're ready to wear. So this is what my pair looks like. And obviously you can really make them look very different depending on what materials that you choose to use. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Now if you like wire kumihimo designs like this, I actually have a book of wire kumihimo designs, so you can feel free to check that out. There's going to be a link in the description box down below for it. And otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.